Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour. I am Kyle Anthony, your host. We're here. We have interviews, MMA banter, and betting advice. This week, UFC 295, a massive card. We're going to break it all down. 4 fights today that we do like, so we're going to break all that down today with my guy, Dan Tom. Got to bring in the big guns here. We got things to talk about. We got bets to hit, so I'm excited about it. Dan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited to talk to you and to talk about the top fights in particularly to see what action we have, don't have, or are possibly leaning toward.
Yeah, right. I think we're going to find some spots. I think we're going to find a couple spots here. So we're going to first set the table for the main event, which is Islam Makhachev minus 265 up against Alexander Volkanovski plus 200. So first part here, obviously, we're going to talk about the past a little bit here. And the big thing here is going to be the fact that this is a rematch. We all know that. This was back in February and really was a surprising battle for everybody to kind of watch, at least for me, because I kind of was more leaning towards Islam going to go out there. He's going to really implement the game plan. He's going to be the bigger guy. He's going to be the stronger guy. And all of those things really start to happen. And you look at the fight, very, very close fight. They battled it out. They really went at it. It was 3-2. I did have Islam. I did have Islam winning that fight 3-2. Very, very close. Now, the closing number there was minus 490 for Islam. Big number there. Now we're looking at it shrunk down a little bit. We got here still a big favorite, minus 265. But the thing for me here, Dan, is the fact that a lot has changed. A lot has changed in that first fight and just over a couple months. And the landscape of this fight is very different. And for me, it's 3 really big spots here. I think the first part is going to be the fact that it's short notice. We all know that. We all get that part of it. But the issue here for me, and I kind of want to know your take, is the short notice mixing in with the fact that he's got to cut some weight. He's got to get out there. He said it was 26 pounds in 11 days. I mean, to me, that does seem pretty substantial for the elite top fighters. If you're fighting a guy that kind of, hey, I'm on a whim, I'm going to go out there. You're fighting one of the top fighters overall. So you've got that going on. You've also got the fact that he's 35. I know Islam's 32, but he's fluctuating from 155 to 145. It looked like he was going to stay at 145. Now, this short notice fight. And then the last part here for me, the intangibles is going to be the surgery that it sounded like the end of the Yair fight. I'm going to take time off. So kind of before I kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts, but what do you think on just the overall landscape and the fact that this is going to be short notice and it's a little bit different of a landscape for Volkanovski?
So, it's not popular and definitely going to come off as being, captain, party pooper here. But this is something that I think, especially for the gambling audience, your audience, Kyle, should take advantage of, is when you have these big narratives, regardless of what you feel and what the matchup calls for, you should always be looking to kind of, go the other way. There's been plenty of reminders recently where going against the public isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? And what does the public often bet on? They often bet on narratives more than, the nitty-gritty tape study X's and O's, which, as much as I or you may like to do those things or are interested in them, sometimes they just don't matter because it is that crazy of a game, right? And as far as the narrative for this fight goes, it's funny where you match up the narrative in the betting line. We had a wider opener and closer, I believe, for the previous fight when they both had full camps. Now, if this was rearranged where they were both on full camps, I would totally get and support the extra respect on the betting line side for Volkanovski. But this is not. This is 11 days notice, and the promotion wants to kind of brush by that part. The fighters, because they are fighters, and they need to, sell the fight both to make their living and to themselves psychologically to step in there, right? Of course, they're going to toe that narrative as well. And in that process, of course, the general public gets picked up and swept in. And even some of my more media colleagues or the more savvier pundits out there are almost not ignoring the elephant in the room, but perhaps not paying as much attention to it. And 11 days notice, even without the surgeries and the cut that you alluded to there, Kyle, that Volkanovski was dealing with. Oliveira wasn't the only one dealing with a cut. Of course, Volkanovski's not as big, but a reoccurring one that it looked like he picked up in the Yair Rodriguez fight where he also had surgery, which the timeline, not to break all that down, but it roughly boils into he's only maybe been, training hard for about a month or so, or could have, the way his, body and recovery timeline goes. So yeah, the weight, all those things. I'm a big Volkanovski fan. I picked Makhachev by decision. I scored it the same way as you, Kyle. And I just feel like I feel like, if you're a Makhachev supporter, I feel like you're almost getting a buy low spot. And as I say that, you're already seeing money trickling in the Makhachev side.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the way I look at it too. And I think the thing for me that I think could be the big changer is all these things we're talking about, like I said, the short notice, the surgery, all these things. But it's just that it drains. I mean, particularly the way I'm looking at it is, it could drain the cardio. It's going to drain some strength. It's going to, all these things, the explosiveness, the things that really made it so close for him. I think he loses those things in this fight where you've got Islam full camp, you've got Islam preparing. I mean, a lot of people I think are diving too into the, oh, it was Charles Oliveira and maybe it's different. He was preparing for one of the elite fighters on the planet in Charles Oliveira. So it's not like he was preparing for some bum that now he's got Volkanovski. I mean, he knew this was a huge fight for him. So to me, this is a spot where I really think that he can get these takedowns. He got 4 last time, 7.5 minutes of control time. I think he really elevates all of that stuff. So I actually think this one goes inside the distance. I think the finish is there. And again, I agree. I think this number's still at minus 265, whatever it is, and climbing up, I think is still too short. I think the real line is more close to what it was the first time. I think that minus 490 line is probably more where it should be, 450. So inside the distance, Islam Makhachev plus 150. That's my play. What do you like to kind of finish this one off?
Yeah, I attacked the board kind of similarly. I went with the under. We get under 4.5, I believe. I was able to actually grab it briefly at a book on an online book for plus 115. But honestly, even though you really can't get that number. Dog there, if you heard that, even though you can't get that number, anywhere between honestly anything, minus 125 or under, I feel like is more than playable chalk there. Obviously, the playable chalk you're on, I don't disagree with either, because I do think Islam gets it done inside, and I think his money rounds are 3, 4, and 5. It would probably be more of a 2, 3, and 4 if this were a full camp. We see how Volkanovski was able to look better in the 5th round. But like you said, Kyle, he's not going to have that advantage. And more importantly, like Volkanovski himself said, he knows he's not going to have that advantage. He's going to try to go for that early finish. So in case he does get that, right, and I wouldn't be mad if he did, because I'm a Volkanovski fan, I went the under route there, under 4.5, just percentage-wise when you're looking at numbers as far as kicking for coverage goes, especially in the total department. That's the best you're going to do in MMA. Hard to, argue you playing an under 4.5 if you've got a decent, propensity for violence at a decent price. So it's hard to argue that play. I'm going to go with that. And then I sprinkled small on some not as big numbers as I would like. The odds makers were a bit savvy. I think I got in the neighborhood of plus 900 for round 3 Islam, plus 1100 for round 4, plus 1600 for round 5. You can probably find much better out there. I'll be looking for much better, but that's just what I'm seeing now. That's how I'm attacking the board on this one.
All right. There you go. So there's the main event. I'm so fired up for that fight. But let me tell you something. This co-main event that also squeaked in on the scorecards out of on the card, the main card here is Chimaev versus Usman. I mean, man, this was a fight a while ago I really was looking for. Now we're getting it, and it's again to me really a tough landscape here, really a tough landscape for Usman. It's almost kind of, verbatim kind of how I feel in certain spots where there's a lot of intangibles, a lot of movement going on in this one here. I mean, obviously you've got the hype train going on here. You got the legend going on the other side, and 2 really big parts. But the intangible, obviously, we're talking about short notice again. We're talking about 8 days or 9 days, whatever it is. I mean, unbelievable that this is happening. So that's one of it. Then you got the next part where another country, right? So you've got that layer of it on top of it. Then you've also got the part where this is going to be not 170, this is going to be 185. And to me, those are some of the things, again, that really start to just push you towards Chimaev in this spot here. I mean, obviously the line is indicating that this thing got blown up at pick'em price and, really went over, I think, minus 300. It's kind of ticked down a little bit, back down to earth a little bit there. But this is a spot where, again, I think that the guy that's going to have the explosiveness, the quickness, the strength advantage, going to be the bigger guy, doesn't have any ailments. I mean, we're just talking about a little bit about, injuries on the Volkanovski side. Here we go again with Usman, who breaks his hand all the time, it sounds like, at the end of his career now. He's got bad knees. He's aging. I mean, this is a guy who was also kind of preparing for, or at least it sounded like, someone in the 170 range that he was going to fight. Now, last second, he's stepping up. That Chimaev over this time was bulking up, preparing. This was something 170 seemed like it was in the rearview mirror, over the last 2 fights, probably in the rearview mirror. So this is where I really think he's going to have the strength advantage. He's going to have the explosiveness. He's going to get him down. I know Usman has a 97% takedown defense rate. I know that's there, but I really think Usman off of his back is going to be a very different story. And I think he gets it there. And how aggressive Chimaev is and how much he hunts for that finish, I think this is a great spot for an under here. I think that Chimaev gets this finish. You've got him inside the distance around pick'em. I like that price. I know it's 3 rounds, but I still think he goes out there, gets the job done inside the 3 rounds. So I like Chimaev here, man. What do you think?
I gotta say, I agree with all that analysis. I think you really nailed it. I like Chimaev here as well, and I think we're on the same thing. I'm usually not a totals guy. This is crazy, but here I am on that total again. You mentioned the under, and if I had the Pee Wee Herman kind of sound bell here to date myself, I would hit that off for the magic word there, because and this is much more chalkier. I'm double checking my numbers here. That's why I pause. I want to make sure I'm giving you guys the correct numbers, and this is where you're getting it first, folks. This week from me. This is before I'm recording my show or any of that, so you're getting my first look over here via Kyle Anthony's show. I got it for minus 155. And you can actually, again, find that probably for a much better price, or maybe it might be pouring in and people are kind of catching on to that, because I believe that around minus 150 area, at least for me, Kyle, that's kind of playable chalk. That's kind of where I start to cut off minus 160, minus 170. I don't get too much farther than that unless I got to be really confident. But this one, I really like it. Even if Usman is an interesting challenge, if he was on a full camp because of his counters, his jabs, and his leg kicks. We saw those all in the Burns fight. That's kind of our main striking size sample, but those are very live. And of course, Usman is lights out takedown defense. However, we did see him the one time he was taken down was by an over-under in the clinch. That's where Chimaev is. And you mentioned big and strong, and boy, did I just go back and watch the tape and compare. Even like in his previous middleweight fights, he didn't look as big as he's looking in the IG coming into this one, Again, Islam and Khamzat, these guys are stationed, being funded, fully camped. I'm not trying to throw any speculation out there, but USADA, it doesn't matter what the USADA deal is, okay? These guys are getting taken care of. Let's just put it that way. And now they're bringing in these fighters that are great fighters, interesting fighters on full camp notice. Some we've seen, right? But it's 11 days notice. So again, we kind of see what's going on here. So I like the Chimaev side too. He's kind of priced out to really play him. So again, if you're going to lay chalk, might as well lay chalk on the under, kick for coverage. But if you can get a hand on, a cheeky Chimaev by round 1 KO prop, in the neighborhood of minus, plus 400 to plus 500. I do feel like that could be worth a sprinkle, because that's going to be my official pick, even though I'd love to see more from Chimaev. Usman's been real susceptible to uppercuts and knees, and Chimaev's been throwing that since his early days in MMA. I imagine those shots have only gotten better. So, I think Chimaev by knockout round 1.
Do you think in this spot, though, and then you've seen this how many times? I mean, it's 2 wrestlers and they just stand, right? Do you think that is a possibility at all, that it could nullify the wrestling? I really think I think Chimaev is going to be shooting like crazy, but if for some reason this 97% holds up, he's big, he's strong, and it plays out on the feet, does that change anything for you on who you would pick?
It doesn't, because, again, I am picking Chimaev by knockout. I don't think he's got a good enough head movement yet. I want to see improvements there, right? And Usman could test him even at 185. But, again, this isn't a full camp Usman. I'm not even speaking of speculation of clips floating around. This is something I've been consistent with, and it's no secret. I'm not the only one saying it. The man's body is barely being held together. So it doesn't change it. And to your point, and to credit your analysis, Kyle, even though I think it's going to be a knockout, I think it's going to be a lot of striking. I also think Chimaev is going to shoot. You look at the Alex Gafurov knockout by uppercut, which is definitely part of my analysis, right? Or the Gilbert Burns, a primarily striking fight. oh, one guy's a sambo guy, the other guy's a jiu-jitsu. Chimaev didn't want to grapple with him. No, if you actually go back and watch the footage, he shot and took down both those fighters, or tried to take down both those fighters early in the contest. So I do agree with you. I think rear naked chokes and darces are going to be the live submission. You're going to get a slightly better price on that, but it's still not enough to really wet my beak. And honestly, I'm just seeing the knockout. So that's what I ultimately picked and played. I sprinkled small on Chimaev round 1 by knockout there.
All right. There we go. We're on the same wavelength so far. Pretty much. So the next one we're going to be talking about here is going to be Magomed Ankalaev, minus 375. We've got Johnny Walker back at plus 285. So this is an explosive fight. It should be. And I feel like the narrative here, obviously, anytime there's a Johnny Walker fight, right, we're going to talk about his chin. We're going to talk about the chin issues. And obviously, I always feel like that's going to be the big part when people start talking about unders and, and all of these things. And yes, that's true. Yes, he has a chin issue. Yes, he's been rocked, wobbled. Even he's been rocked and wobbled when he's won in the first round. I mean, he'll end a guy in the first round, still get rocked twice in the first round. So, and to me, I actually think, and we're all seeing this, obviously, is he's definitely being more patient. He's being more measured. He's trying to protect the chin a little bit. He's got the high guard. He's really just, playing to almost what the opponent does. When he fought Cutelaba, you can't really play at range with Cutelaba. He's just going to bulldoze forward, throw like crazy. And to Walker's credit, he can do those things too. He definitely can. He's more susceptible to getting hit, but he can. But what he has done, I thought, with the Thiago Santos fight, with even the Anthony Smith fight, was just working at range. And I know it's not the sexy kind of finish or the way that people want to see these fights play out, but he's really protecting it. And with Anthony Smith, I had took a big play on Johnny Walker in that fight, and it didn't really fully play out to the way I thought it would be, but it definitely at range. I'm like, this is his thing now. This is where he's going to be playing. This is where he wants to be. Saturday, he's going to have this 7-inch reach advantage. He's going to be able to utilize that. And the issue, I think, with Ankalaev, where I do think he has a high probability to go out there, and yes, could he clip him? I mean, the guy is a top-level striker, but 4 out of his last 5 went to a decision, and we have seen he is fine just kind of being at range himself. Very, low-level output, playing to his opponent, risk-adverse, not really just – and that hurt him, obviously, in the Blachowicz fight. So there are some things where this kind of thing, if they're both going to be playing at range, both be playing at distance, you may see this go the distance. You may see this go the full 15. And even if Magomed gets a takedown, he has 1 submission out of his 18 victories. So he's, yes, he can get some control time. Yes, he can get certain things. Could he do some ground and pound? Sure. But I really feel like Walker is elevating some of that, getting a little bit better on the ground. And I think that 7-inch reach advantage can push this also to the decision. So I actually do like fight going to decision, plus 150, also over 2.5, plus 123. I think this gets to that mark. And I do not think either guy goes crazy. I think it's a very, very, maybe even a boring fight, but I think it gets to the judges' scorecards there, and I think it's worth the play on that over. What do you think, Dan?
I don't disagree at all. This fight, I'm still running the proverbial comb through. I got to go back and rewatch the Anthony Smith fight, so I'm just speaking off of memory, but I do agree with your analysis of it. I actually picked Smith in that fight, and that was really frustrating, as is any Anthony Smith fight, whether you're watching it or betting on it, right? But it did show that even with Anthony Smith going through his kind of, and I say with all due respect, I love Anthony Smith, but when he's if he's still able to get in top positions whilst going through a therapy session and not throwing any strikes, I imagine that Ankalaev, even in his own frustrating ways, can at least bank the round, if not get the finish, which plays more to this thing going along, right? Don't get me wrong. I think the money knows where to go in this fight, right? You look at it, the money's been coming in on the money line for the underdog. That's what you should be doing. A light heavyweight, a finisher, kick for coverage. I don't blame it. But now that line's coming down, it's not exactly bringing the Ankalaev line down enough where this fight's sexy. Let's be honest, 360, it could be minus 160, and I would still be just as trepidatious looking at taking Ankalaev side in a play. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just kind of that uneasy. So that's why I like where your head's at. That's where my head's at too. Even though, unfortunately, the gamblers' heads are at that. I think we had to open at plus 260 for Ankalaev by decision. Now you get more toward the plus 225, plus 230 area. I still think that's sexy enough for a sprinkle. It's definitely sexy enough if like maybe you want to put Ankalaev in like a round robin. If you're like me, you're just looking for those fun props to where you don't have a lot of exposure, but if that hits, perhaps you can get some multipliers there. I am just nervous as all heck as going for the obvious of picking Ankalaev, not sweating the method, and kicking for coverage by putting him in, right? And that's a little dangerous there, you know. I would stick to just contrarian looks at plus money, overs, or goes the distance props. I'm with Kyle here.
Yeah, that's I gotta agree with that, and I still feel like part of me wanted to, you know, like my initial was like, oh, Johnny Walker and maybe a flyer on a KO would be, you know, some big
Right.
And I'm like, wait, hold on a minute here, like let's, you know, could Johnny Walker win? Of course, he's got the ability to, but I mean, really feeling like, and especially looking back at the styles of both of these guys and the new game plan basically of Johnny Walker, I got to see this go in the 15 minutes. So we'll see how that all plays out there. And the last one here we're going to go over here is going to be Muin Gafurov versus Saeed Nurmagomedov. Now, this one here, it was one I was kind of going back and forth with at first. You're looking at it, you got the shiny last name there. It's exciting. You feel, hey, it's a Nurmagomedov. Of course, he's not related to them, but good fighter, has done some great things. You know, he's, you know, explosive in certain spots, great, you know, flashy kicks, some spinning kicks. He's good at range. He's pretty well-rounded overall. And all those things when I was first looking into this is really was like, wow, okay, yeah, you know, I do remember him this way, and I do remember a lot of the great things that he does. But the biggest red flag for me that just kept poking out was his cardio. It was just the cardio concerns to me were so bad that I was almost like I forgot about it. And you even look, who was it? It was Kakramanov fight where he won the fight. But I mean, Kakramanov just came forward, really wrestling, and was almost, I mean, he was drowning in that fight. I mean, he looked like he was drowning and ended up latching in a guillotine and finishing the fight. Even when the fight was over, he almost couldn't even get up. This is the second round. So it wasn't like this was this war. And you even saw that even, my biggest play last week was Jonathan Martinez. And the biggest reason he was my biggest play was because what he did to Saeed, and also just how good he looked. And that to me, really, again, as he's going through these fights, as he's getting into that second round, he really starts to die off now. Not going to say, Gafurov is this elite level guy, but what he does bring, in my opinion, is the pressure, the output, the smothering. I mean, he is not technical. He throws these big overhand hooks. And if he lands, he could definitely hurt you, but he will push forward. He will get in your face. He will make it a brawl. And that to me is something where Saeed does not want to be. He wants to be kicking range. He wants to be, working his footwork. And if he's going to be backpedaling and if he's going to be taking shots and putting his back up against the fence consistently, and I don't think this is going to be really getting to the ground at all. I think he needs to, kind of reserve some of that gas tank there. I think this is Gafurov here at the plus money. I mean, if the numbers were different, I would think different, but this is a spot where I think that a lot of people are going to be sliding Nurmagomedov into their parlays. They're going to feel comfortable about it. He's going to be maybe 250 going off by the time, everything goes off on Saturday. So I think could be a parlay buster for me. So for me, little sprinkle here, I think is worth it on Gafurov. Plus 180, I think the number is there. How do you feel?
Kyle, that's why I love you, man. And you don't just, sound good. You don't just have like a good looking show display that puts mine to shame, by the way. But you actually know your stuff, man. You actually know your stuff. Watch the footage, but even further, because there are people that even go, as far as you do, or I do to do these kind of shows and whatnot. And that's why I appreciate you guys. But you learn. You're able to learn from your results, is what you just said. And Jonathan Martinez is a guy, and I know it's one of those silly sports fan things where you're like, I like this guy back in draft season when no one called him and no one was talking about, and we all have that, right? Where we're like, it's like our son, we just want to part their hair and pet them. Like this is our boy. So when they go out and make us proud, right, and win us some money, Jonathan Martinez is that for me, because I've been like defending this guy like every fight, I always on an island, especially in that Saeed Nurmagomedov fight where he was a big underdog, right? And it's funny because have to listen like analysis people like, oh well, he got beat by another long guy and Andre Uhl, and it's like anybody who watches that fight knows it's one of the worst scorecards of all time. You can't just look at the record. You actually have to go and watch the footage sometimes. And Martinez is a guy who is been big value, and Nurmagomedov is a guy who, I've been not too high on. He gets a lot of inflation because of the last name, even not being Nurmagomedov. We see that just if your last name has an OV at the end of it. Let's be honest here, right? There is an inflation there. And the fact that not that he's not good, but it's just, let's speak facts. He's not related to Khabib. Not that should matter one way or another. And two, he's a Wushu Sanda guy. Everybody talks about Dagestani wrestling, and that's why I made the meme of the person holding up the baby in the water. It's Dagestani wrestling. Meanwhile, like Sambo is like trying to hold water, and then Wushu Sanda's at the bottom. But in reality, Wushu Sanda and Sambo are like the main martial arts there. Like it's been there forever. They have strong. So seeing guys that can spin kick as well as Saeed is actually not a surprise, folks. And he does have underrated wrestling. That being said, as far as the jiu-jitsu or the layers go, I got to go with the Sambo champ that is Muin Gafurov as far as that advantage goes. Now, will I go with him for my official pick? I'm actually in the process of putting this one through the comb right now, but I can tell you much more confidently than even the other fight that I said it and did much more and had more stats to give you guys. I can tell you this is the same situation in the sense of Walker and Dagestani Stipe over there, Ankalaev, in the sense that this is a dogger pass spot. So I don't blame you, Kyle, for going Gafurov here. I've got a good feeling on him. And what I'm actually looking at to target right now, regardless of the side, which I believe is a dogger pass from a betting perspective, is the totals, the 2.5. I'm not a total guy, I promise, folks. It really seems like it.
You're firing them off though.
but they're giving you, they don't know where to go with it. And I find that very interesting. So I'm going to see if I get a strong stylistic read, because when I say they don't know where to go with it, it opened and it's pretty much stayed roughly at a pick'em price as far as the 2.5 rounds, which I believe is the look and the more available number at most books. So that's what I'm going to look to see if anything tickles me there. But otherwise, it feels like a real dogger pass spot here, Kyle.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it too. And we've seen, this one thing about this card, there are wide lines and most of them are getting wider. So it's like,
yes,
you're going to have to get creative for the most part here if you're going to be looking at spots and kind of getting all those things. So, definitely there are some, which I will be definitely firing on because props just came out too long ago, was some of, to be honest with you, like you said, you're not a totals guy, maybe now. That's where I'm going to be looking. Methods, totals, inside the distance. Those are the things I'm going to be really looking at here to try to capture some profit for UFC 294. So there you have it. There is the show. I'm excited about this weekend. We nailed it. I think we got a couple winners here. Dan, listen, man, I'm glad that you're on. I'm glad to have you here, man. It was a long time ago where me and you met up in Vegas. Long time. We got to do that again sometime, man. We got to do it again sometime.
Dude, hit me up next time you're in town. No joke. Let's do it. Hit me up next time you're in town. Let's go.
All right, my buddy. All right, man. There you have it. Excited, and we'll see how we do, and we'll see you next time on the MMA Happy Hour. Take care.